Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Gotta tell you. I am in a state of complete astonishment and shock. First of all, that intro played as it didn't yesterday, and it appears, even though Kevin and I worked on it for like an hour yesterday afternoon and got nowhere, I think we can take calls today, even though that was not what it looked like yesterday after we fiddled. So I'm all hooked up. I don't know why. We're completely confused, but I'm very happy. And if you want to call today, call. I'm just saying. I'll be able to take those calls. But we do have some kind of a gremlin in the works, no doubt about it. And we'll just do the best we can. Roll with the punches. All right, you guys, it's the 11th of April. Oh boy, I'm so looking forward to the 15th. I've never looked forward to April 15th because April 15th, as you know, is, when you gotta pay Uncle Sam. But the fact that this trial of Trump could actually begin is amazing. Amazing. I can't imagine that on Monday they'll get to anything other than perhaps starting to pick a jury. I don't think they'll be doing witnesses, obviously, because they won't have a jury yet. But wow, should be interesting. I also just read somewhere that there is a potential or an intent by pro-Palestinian protesters to pretty much shut down as many cities as they can on Monday through whatever civil disobedience it takes, but clogging up highways and or whatever. We'll see if that in fact happens, but just a heads up that the 15th of April might be a very big news day. I wanted to note my joy at the beauty of spring. I do. I find myself, walking around in my neighborhood, stopping, staring at a tree about to break into bloom, staring at trees already in bloom, staring at just all of this beautiful life coming back. It's really, it is awesome. And it's hard to, well, I'm sure poets and such have put into words its glory, but I don't know if it's by virtue of being an older person that I'm stopping and taking the time to take it in more than a busy younger self perhaps did. Um, and that it's a joy, just a joy. The dog doesn't know what I'm doing. When we walk, it's he who always stops to smell the roses or smell the bird crap on the sidewalk. But he's the one who stops all the time. And understanding that he and I have different views of the world and how do we enjoy it, I stop as well and let him do his thing. But he's now having to stop for me, and he doesn't understand. What is she doing? Staring at that tree. but there it is. Anyway, I wanted to note it because if for some reason you are one of those still very busy people, try to treat yourself and just stand still for a while and take it in. I think that's the only personal kind of meandering I've got for you today. I have a question about something, and I wonder if it's occurred to you. If you pay attention to international news, and Ukraine is what I'm talking about now, and our failing them as we are now, we not being all of us, we being the Republicans and other puppets of Putin, who, of course, invaded Ukraine. There's so many now who actually serve in our government who are openly siding with our enemy and harming our ally, Ukraine. But because Ukraine is still in this horrific fight for its survival and outgunned, outmanned in every respect, it has had to make more of its men eligible for the draft. And that is a very contentious kind of a thing in its own domestic politics, as it would be in any country. But the thing that I've noted that is so strange to me is what they have decided they are doing is they are lowering the draft age. And they are now going to be drafting 25-year-olds and up. Used to be 27-year-olds and up. Now, that is so unlike what we do. Our draft took teenagers, right? 18. They just went through this whole internal political difficulty of lowering theirs to 25. And I'm wondering, am I reading this right? So they must have, it's a totally different sense, cultural sense, national sense of who should fight our wars. We take, as I said, 18-year-olds. The reason, when I first voted, I didn't vote when I was 18 or 19. I had to wait till I was 21. That's what was considered an adult. But yet, we thought then children, 18 and 19-year-olds, were just fine to be cannon fodder in our wars. And so it was Vietnam that made people see the outrageousness of telling someone you're old enough to give your life for your country, but you're not old enough to have a say and a vote. And so our voting age was lowered to 18. But I'm just wondering, it's so not what we do. So they've been fighting this war with older people. Their young men have not been, I suppose they can enlist, but they have not been available for the government to insist that they fight. And now anyone who's 25 or 26 is in that boat as well. I just find it interesting, and I don't know why, because we Americans are just so often clueless about how the rest of the world operates, that I don't know. I was always assuming that, well, all countries must sort of, when someone's 18, think you're good, you're good to go and to die. And yet, obviously, Ukraine, this is a totally different thing. So I'm I'm flummoxed by that, and not flummoxed enough that I went and did any research into it, but nonetheless, flummoxed. Well, Barbara, you get my attention when you say apropos of Wordsworth, because Wordsworth came up the other day, did he not? When I said, was it "The World is Too Much with Me"? And that's from a Wordsworth poem, and we then talked about what a great name for a poet, Wordsworth. But thank you. So I said that poets have no doubt managed to find the words uh, for the awe that we feel with the rebirth we see in the spring. And Barbara has sent me this, and it's titled "Lines Written in Early Spring" by William Wordsworth. I heard 1,000 blended notes while in a grove I sat reclined, in that sweet mood when pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to the mind. To her fair works did nature link the human soul that through me ran, and much it grieved my heart to think what man has made of man. Through primrose tufts in that green bower, the periwinkle trailed its wreaths, and 'tis my faith that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. The birds around me hopped and played, their thoughts I cannot measure, but the least motion which they made, it seemed a thrill of pleasure. The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air, and I must think, do all I can, that there was pleasure there. If this belief from heaven be sent, if such be nature's holy plan, have I not reason to lament what man has made of man? Whoa. Whoa. Well, I'll have to think me on that some, because he takes this glory of nature and the joy of the natural world that he perceives, but it makes him think of the shortcomings of we humans. Did I read that right? Wow. I was never one to necessarily comprehend poetry. Um, I find it mysterious, and yet there are certain poets who have gotten through to me. My favorite of all time being John Donne, who is, I mean, wrote some of the sultriest sonnets ever. It's just, whoa. And he was a man of God, John Donne. Okay, so I suppose we could get into some more serious fare. Not that poetry and nature and the love of spring is not. Uh, I tried to hide my disappointment yesterday. I didn't even mention it. That I was again not invited to the state dinner. Never have been. I've been waiting all my life to get invited to one of those swanky White House state dinners, and I was yet again overlooked. But I found the guest list. So I see who did get invited, and I don't know. First of all, most of the people here I never heard of, but I do understand that they are the movers and shakers of the world. But Jeff Bezos, for instance, and his horrible wife, Lauren Sanchez, they got to go. Now, why would that be, do you think? And then someone I spoke of yesterday, uh, Biden's granddaughter, whose diary was stolen and sold for $40,000 to Republicans wanting to smear and besmirch him before the election. She was invited. I see her, Ashley Biden, and one Finnegan Biden as well. And then a bunch of mayors and Governor Josh Shapiro. Yeah, he and his wife were there. I'm just telling you, you might not have known it, but I'm looking at the list. The Clintons were there. Um, the head of the CIA, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, was there. So, yeah, the movers and shakers. Robert De Niro and his young wife, Tiffany Chen, were there. Wisconsin's governor was there as well. So I wonder if they invited the governors of the states they got to win. So you had Pennsylvania, and I think Michigan's governor, I think, is on the list as well, and Pennsylvania. So that might be it. I don't know. Yeah, Jennifer Granholm uh, wasn't she the Michigan governor? But now she's the Secretary of Energy. And I don't know. I'm just looking. The mayor of Seattle, big deal. Most of these people, I don't know. It doesn't look like a fun crowd to me, frankly. Uh, I don't know. Senator this, Senator that. Kelly O'Donnell. Isn't she an on-air kind of person? Well, John Podesta, but Cecile Richards was there, former head of Planned Parenthood, who I remember reading and about and not liking what I read that she has a terminal cancer. Please tell me that's wrong. Josh Rogan, he's on the list. He was there, and Ali Rogan, and I don't know, but I was not. I don't see anybody. It just doesn't look like that interesting a crowd. Janet Yellen, and there you go. I mean, can you imagine how sort of stiff and boring those events must be? The sort of diplomatic dance and carefully chosen words, and it doesn't sound like it'd be a lot of fun. But you'd like to say, "I went once. I was invited." Do you know anyone who was ever invited? Yesterday, I told you about the a little bit of the history of this 160-year-old Arizona law that will once again be, speaking of spring and resurrection, will and has been resurrected by the Arizona Supreme Court. And I mentioned that this one guy had pretty much written all of those laws. I didn't have his name. I think his name is William Claude Jones. Now, I might be wrong here, but there's a piece about a guy, in fact, who did live, William Claude Jones, and who was Speaker of the House for the Arizona Territory when that wonderful law and many others were originally passed in 1864. And a Washington Post reporter did a deep dive into him to see. We already know there were 27 white men who comprised the legislature, the government of the Arizona Territory, and who enacted this law that now is again, it's back. So a quick little history of him is just beyond belief. It has to do with his marriages. Hang on here and try to follow. He began with a marriage to a poor soul named Sarah Freeman, who bore him 2 children in the 1840s when he was in his 20s. He was in the Missouri state legislature at that time, but he wanted to, I guess, he had ambitions, so he left Missouri and went to Texas and went to Arkansas. He's looking for, like an invite to the state dinner. He's looking to pull up there. And in fact, in 1854, President of the United States, Franklin Pierce, did name this jerk the U.S. Attorney for the New Mexico Territory. And he said, sure, I'm taking that. But first, I got to divorce this wife of mine. So he did. Then he upped and married a poor soul named Maria del Refugio. And she was 12 years old. There was a guy who was a delegate for the New Mexico Territory who really was appalled that this new U.S. attorney came in and scarfed up a 12-year-old for his bride. And he maintained that Jones had actually abducted her, and he petitioned the president to fire him for moral failing. But Jones got ahead of it and he resigned. Did this stop his upward trajectory? Not one bit. So he moved a little bit farther west to the Arizona Territory. And there he found his third wife, Carolyn Stevens. And by then, I guess he'd learned his lesson. We don't hear about what happened to the second one. I don't know, but this one would be the third one. And he was understanding that, 12 is just a little young. So his third wife was 15, and he was about 50 years old at the time. And that one didn't last either. They were married for about a year, and he, in 1865, had left her. And she never saw or heard from him again, and I'm sure she was thrilled. He boarded a train for California, a boat for Hawaii. He entered local politics. He won the seat in the Hawaii, which was a kingdom, in their lower house. And he married, of course, a little princess who was pregnant with his child. And she was 14 years old. She died at the age of 28 after bearing him several children. And then he took a fifth wife named Mary Aquina. We don't know how old she was, but, let's say she had to be over 11. I don't know. And he divorced her 2 years later, and then he friggin' died. Okay. But we've passed over before he went to Hawaii that he, had a bit to do in Arizona. When he was there, he was elected to represent Tucson, and then he was elected Speaker of the House, and it was that House that Jones presided over in 1864. After he had abandoned his first wife, married the 12-year-old, and was just weeks away from marrying the 15-year-old, although still a few years away from marrying a 14-year-old, it was that legislature that this SOB headed that passed a law denying women the right to control their own bodies. And it was that same legislation that was reinstated as law in Arizona by its Supreme Court. Monica Hess, who made this deep dive into the history of just one of these white men who gave us this law 160 years ago, William Claude Jones, a guy who clearly never thought of a woman, a child, a girl, as anything more than something to bear his children and then to be discarded. And this guy and his moral sense are now the benchmark for the reproductive rights of the 7 million people who live in the now state of Arizona. God, really something. Really something. Well, the thing I do like about something like this, as awful as it is that it is, an opportunity to learn something about a history that we maybe don't know. Um, I remember telling you once that I was, had a Zoom call with the guys at a bank where I got most of my ill-gotten gains, and this is an annual thing they subject me to. And one of them, whose job is to tell me how he perceives the future economic picture, and I so cannot tolerate this crap. And he said, and I think I shared this with you, he said, now artificial intelligence, this AI, is just going to, blow up. The opportunities here are huge, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking to myself, you numbskull. I mean, this job you have is a perfect job for AI. What do? You look at trends, you crunch numbers, stock numbers and stuff like right. I mean, you try to determine, you gaze into tea leaves and try to determine what lies ahead. And good God, I'm thinking, here you are crowing about AI, and it's going to have you in the unemployment line in a year or two. I mean, because that is exactly the kind of job AI will take. And I didn't say any of that, but I come upon a story yesterday about Wall Street and how all the big Wall Street firms are figuring out how they can get rid of a whole bunch of the people who work on Wall Street, doing exactly that kind of job, analyzing the numbers. And it says that Wall Street's major banks are figuring they can largely replace their armies of analysts by AI, which will, in a matter of seconds, do the job that would take the army of human analysts hours or weeks to do. It's a no-brainer if you're a capitalist. Out with those people. Out with those pesky, slow people who cost you a lot of money. And in with the machine, the AI. And then they go on to list Goldman Sachs and all the others, Deutsche Bank, Morgan Stanley, yada, yada, yada. All of them are starting to figure how they can get rid of a whole ton. These are these sort of entry level, somebody gets an MBA and they try for one of these, starting on the sort of ground floor at one of these major banks, and knowing that after a few years of paying your dues, you have an opportunity to rise up and, make mega bucks. Those jobs are simply going to be gone. And I find it interesting. I didn't get the sense that this poor schmo who that it even occurred to him. I mean, if it did, it would be odd that he would be so upbeat about seeing this threat to his own livelihood as a positive. Okay, I want to shit. I'm all over the place today, so forgive me. Segueing from this to anything. Although AI, I do have one other AI thing. I don't know if you noted this. I thought it was interesting. There are some things that AI apparently can do anything, but there are things that it can do that, might actually make things better. And there had been an interesting piece about the amount of food that we waste. Now, we each individually know how much food we waste. The stuff you throw out of the refrigerator, the stuff rotting in the bins, the bread gone to mold. You cook something and, there's a little bit left, but what the heck, and out it goes. Food, food. And it's often, I can't throw anything out food wise that does not make me feel guilty. In fact, in the United States, it is estimated that a third of food that is grown, the crops, the food that is actually grown, a third of it is never eaten. It just wastes away. And that food waste ends up in dumpsters, which end up in landfills where it decays and, you got it, sends greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. In fact, they figure that food waste accounts for as much as 10% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. AI And some restaurants, some supermarkets are starting to use AI to keep an eye on what food they are wasting. Um, the huge amounts of uneaten food from restaurants, or food that supermarkets throw out. I mean, it's just insane. So I guess AI is able to tell a restaurant or a grocery store, this is what you're regularly throwing out. And so they can stop uh, putting themselves in the position of having to, and it's throwing away money for them as well. It's estimated that 70% of wasted food that comes from restaurants is food that is left on plates. So, what does that tell you? It tells you that this gargantuan portion size that has helped make us the most obese humans on earth is insane. And so restaurants helped us fatten up like that. And if they would pull back, if we would look and see what is thought to be, now that is a perfect portion, because our portions are over the top. And I, as somebody who can happily eat everything on my plate, would be healthier if, in fact, I wasn't being given the opportunity to eat as much as I do. Okie doke. I've got a little sports tidbit here. I just want to say, as far as I know, right, the Penguins, unbelievably, are still in the hunt for a playoff spot, although it's. And the Pirates are continuing to uh, baffle uh, anybody who's watching. Um, but this comes from Pittsburgh Quarterly, and I did not know this. Hank Greenberg, whose name I certainly did know because he was the first Jew, as far I think he was the first Jew, certainly the first Jewish superstar in baseball. He was the first Jew in the Baseball Hall of Fame, I think. Um, I didn't know that he played, however briefly, after his most of his career in Detroit. I He put on a Pirate uniform, and I did not know that. And it says here it was April 15th, 1947, that Hank Greenberg played his first game for the Pirates. And it wasn't here, um, but it was at Wrigley Field, playing, of course, the Cubs, and he doubled in the only run of the game, and the Pirates won. Now, on that same date, it's a big date for baseball, and not because Hank Greenberg started his Pittsburgh Pirate career, but because further to the east and 2 hours earlier at Ebbets Field, a player named Jackie Robinson had trotted onto the infield, and in so doing, integrated baseball. Um, so the only other thing in this, I mean, Greenberg. This story goes on to talk about how Greenberg suffered just constant taunts from players and opposing players and people in the stands about being a Jew. And he noted in a biography that especially when he played in southern towns, when he was in the minor leagues, he not only faced hostility but curiosity. And boy, I know about that. He said, because I was the first Jew a lot of these people had ever seen, and they really seemed surprised that I didn't have horns and a beard. And I've told you the story of where I was once asked by this just sweet kid who'd never seen a Jew before, but me, and she asked me, "Where are your horns?" And that's the first I heard that Jews were supposed to have horns. So I don't know. The taunting of Greenberg became so vicious in the 1935 World Series that the home plate umpire threatened to stop the game and warned the Cubs to get a handle on it. And Greenberg always said, all this anti-Jew stuff, it helped me more than it hurt because I played all the harder. The reaction was, oh, yeah? Well, watch this hornless Jew do this, you SOBs. And he knew that what he was enduring was nothing compared to what Jackie Robinson endured. I mean, when and Greenberg spoke of it. He said when Jackie came into the league in '47, some of his teammates asked to be traded. Opposing players threatened to go on strike. He was not allowed to sleep or eat with the rest of the team. And Greenberg said, "Good God, I never encountered anything like that." Now, these two men, Greenberg and Robinson, first met up at Forbes Field. It was a game on May 15th, so it would have been in '47, 1 month after Robinson had integrated the game, and 1 month after Hank Greenberg had donned a pirate uniform. And this article says that that game featured one of the most dramatic moments in baseball's racial history. Because in the fourth inning, Jackie Robinson laid down a bunt, and as he reached first base, Greenberg, who was playing first base, he was? I thought he was a pitcher. What do I know? Greenberg had to reach into Robinson's path to field the throw from the Pirate pitcher of the bunt. And Greenberg and Robinson crashed into each other. And Greenberg, they both went down. Now enter the Pittsburgh Courier. At the time, I think the largest black newspaper in the country, and its Hall of Fame sports writer, Wendell Smith. And Wendell Smith, who was at the game, said that these two colliding, that a white guy going down with a black guy, that this was the kind of play that many who were opposed to Robinson or to black players said could cause a riot. The fear that a white and a black crashing to the ground would make, I don't know, the people in the stands go berserk. Didn't happen. In fact, Greenberg helped Robinson to his feet and asked him if he was okay. And he even took the time to say, because he'd never spoken to him before, he said, I know you're going through a lot of rough stuff, but just hang in there and fight back. Greenberg retired after that season, and there's that. I always remembered him as the guy who refused to play on Yom Kippur, because that was, I can't, in a World Series game, wasn't it? I don't know. That was a brave thing to do. Whatever. So there's a little baseball trivia for you, which I found of some interest. AC writes, does anyone have any idea why there is not an effort right now to repeal the Comstock Act? Seems like this would be a good idea. Yeah, but who's going to repeal it? This Congress? It would take congressional action, wouldn't it? It would be a good idea because a possible fascist regime can certainly, you're saying if Trump gets into the White House, he would use. Now, the Comstock Act, here again, as long as we're doing history, you know, there are a lot of laws on the books in states, as the Arizonans have now found out, but also here in Pennsylvania, that, you know, a little, because legislatures and Congress don't bother going back and sort of cleaning up laws that can be difficult. I mean, the Comstock Act, God. This is the act that banned contraception. It defined contraceptives as obscene and made it a federal crime. But so the Comstock Act, wait, they were rendered null and void by Supreme Court decisions Griswold v. Connecticut and Eisenstadt. So what Comstock, I'm confused. They are set of federal laws passed by the Congress under the Grant administration, and I don't think they're. Wait, after the after the Dobbs decision. Oh, it's after Dobbs. The enforceability of the Comstock laws became the subject of legal dispute, with this jerk Texas judge Kaczmarek ruling that the Comstock Act made mailing of abortion pills illegal. Yeah, but the court didn't agree with them. So the Comstock laws, there are more than one, and in fact, this judge showed these things can be resurrected and used. So they managed to get, you know, contraception pulled out and made obviously legal. I don't know. There's so much I don't know. So much that I don't know. There was a story that I came upon that was such a happy, good news story that I thought maybe I could share it with you because it's something that makes you feel better about the world. And again, maybe you saw it too, but this was also in the Washington Post, and it's a story that did just happen, and it's of two men, uh, one white, one black, who knew each other because they were both really, really good pool players, and they would run into each other at tournaments, and both were good players. One was James Harris, and the other was a guy named Russ Redhead. And the funny thing is of course he's got red hair. There's one of those names again. Somewhere those redhead people kept their red hair. You can see where they got the name in the first place, but how many generations later, Russ still understandably had a red head. But these two were, relatively friendly adversaries until one time when Harris beat out Redhead for an all expense paid trip to an international pool tournament in Las Vegas. That happened 10 years ago. And Redhead did not take that loss well. And it was because I don't understand. It's like golf. You play with handicaps. Redhead had a higher played at a higher skill level, and so Harris was given a 20-point handicap, and that is what allowed Harris to win the tournament. Even though if it was just going man to man, Redhead actually played it better, but that's not how the game works. Anyway, Redhead was so angry at losing out on this ability to get into an international tournament that he took to Facebook, and well, Harris, who's 54 years old, said, "Man, he blasted me all over the place, saying I was cheating the system, blah 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 blah." And Redhead asked about it. He's 42, he's younger, and he's from Lancaster, by the way. He said, "I don't remember exactly what I said, but I wasn't very kind. And then when people started defending James Harris, I realized I'd made a big mistake." And so Redhead turns out to be a hothead who was not a good loser in that one instance. And he eventually, it doesn't say how long it took, he eventually apologized to Harris for the things he had said. And years pass, and years pass, and he hears that Harris is dying. He's dying for want of a kidney. And Harris never would have told anybody about this. But Harris's wife, she was desperately trying to find a match for him. No one in the family, nobody they knew was. And she saw Redhead at a tournament, and she told him. And, well, you know where I'm going now. So Redhead went and saw if he possibly could donate one of his kidneys, and yeah, he did. So Redhead, by the way, is a single father with one daughter, and as I said, he's 42 years old. And he said, "Well, the way I was raised, when you can do something for someone, you do it. Uh, do I really need two kidneys? when I can save a friend's life with one? And so the two go into the hospital together, these two former adversaries, and man, I'm looking at the pictures of the two of them before. O.J. Simpson is dead. Speaking of a not very nice person, he's dead. Just saying. Just flashed up here. Anyway, that is a really, 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 really great story, and now a solid friendship. And there's so many wonderful things in it about a guy who, first of all, acknowledged he was wrong, and then had this extraordinary opportunity to make it right, and to do what he did. So they now, I mean, this has just changed, obviously, James Harris's life. He's now got a life ahead of him, and the two of them are best friends. 56-year-old black man, 42-year-old white guy, who both play a mean game of pool. So there's that. But wow. So we're going to be subjected to God, O.J. Simpson. We're going to be subjected to O.J. Simpson history for the next few days, because that's the way that works. Says here he died 76 years old. It's cancer. He said, I don't know, not known what kind. But OJ's story finally ends. Boy, oh boy. That was something, huh? Okay, I think that's it for me, guys. I was actually going to take next week off because I thought I wasn't going to be able to take calls, and now I don't know if I'm going to be able to take calls because I think it was almost a fluke. And I could take calls today and nobody called unless I missed. But I've been sort of trying to keep an eye on it. And it's better when folks call, I'll tell you that. Otherwise, what are you just listening to this, this old lady prattle on? Much better when you guys intervene, I would say. So the rains are coming, I guess. Stay dry, stay warm, stay good. Take care of yourselves, and stop and look at the beauty around you. That's all I got to say. Man, stop and look at the beauty. It's so astonishing this spring. Come on. Come on.
Lynn Cullen Live,
Jesus.
Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.